Tony Hembry, and welcome to In God We Trust, a show where we examine a headline through a biblical lens. The Christian Post has reported that Christian defectors from North Korea not only want the regime deposed, but also wish for the unification of North and South Korea through the gospel. Pastor Gong Chul-ho, founder of the first North Korean defector church in South Korea and vice president of the North Korean Christian Association, believes that the tyrannical regime is more fearful of the North Korean defectors than the military strength of South Korea. At the 12th meeting of North Korea Freedom Week in Washington, D.C., Pastor Gong said, "I come to realize more and more each time I attend these rallies, there is an important role to be played by North Korean escapees, and Kim Jong-un has reportedly stated that he was not afraid of the 600,000 military personnel in South Korea, but he was concerned about the North Korean escapees and that these escapees were a threat to the republic." Gong claims that the dictator is fearful of those who risk their lives to leave North Korea in search of freedom because he knows that they will eventually come back to liberate their homeland, where Christian worship is currently prohibited. Many of the defectors have fled to South Korea, where people there are not as quick to move toward unifying the two countries. Now, prior to the rally, Pastor Gong and many of his supporters were given death threats over the internet. But Gong responded, "I shall not be threatened or in fear and shall stand strong. And the next North Korea Freedom Week will be held in the North Korean capital of Pyongyang, I believe." That may be more hopeful than realistic within a year, but it brings up the question, do Christians have the right to rebel against their government? Many Christians believe that Romans 13 forbids it, but I'd like to examine the first 4 verses of this chapter a little closer to see if Paul really means just that. Romans 13, 1-4 says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." Now, at first glance, it sounds like we are to submit at all times. But what happens when the authorities are not acting like God's servants? Romans 13 is referring to legitimate government, meaning some of God's authority is delegated first to man in the form of inalienable rights. Collectively, then, man delegates some of that authority to the governing institution to protect what God had given man, thereby making government subject to the law of God as an agent of good conduct for man, by upholding the law of the land, i.e. God's law. Late 20th century Christian philosopher Francis Schaeffer says in the Christian Manifesto that God has ordained the state as a delegated authority. It is not autonomous. The state is to be an agent of justice, to restrain evil by punishing the wrongdoer, and to protect the good in society. When it does the reverse, it has no proper authority. It is then a usurped authority, and as such, it becomes lawless and is tyranny. So God's authority is first, then man, then government. What happens then when government commandeers the authority of its citizens by forcing them to obey man rather than God? Is civil disobedience an appropriate response? This is what the North Korean defectors are advocating for. Near the end of the Protestant Reformation in 1644, Samuel Rutherford's Lex Rex, the Law and the Prince, touted the theory that citizens have a moral duty to resist unjust and tyrannical governments. Rutherford said that a power, ethical, political, or moral, to oppress is not from God, and is not a power, but a licentious deviation of power, and is no more from God, but from sinful nature and the old serpent, than a license to sin. And while we must always be subject to the office of magistrate, we are not to be subject to the man in that office who commands that which is contrary to the Bible. So the claim here is that the government authority we submit to in Romans 13 is that of the office itself, not the one in charge of that position if he or she is not honoring that office, him or herself. So Pastor Gong is not rebelling against God by civilly disobeying the tyranny of North Korea. By becoming a defector in South Korea, these Christian men and women can rally support from their neighbors by bringing awareness to the wrongdoings of the regime. thereby exposing the deeds of darkness, and that is why Kim Jong-un is fearful of this. For everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. Well, thank you for joining me today, and remember, you can help Bible Discovery TV share the light of Christ through your giving. One of the ways you can give is by ordering a beautifully customized t-shirt from our friends at inspiretees.com. Please use the promo code BDTV at checkout to receive free shipping with your order. Until next time, let us fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal, and that is our God in whom we can trust. So see you then.